Okay, I know. I'm definitely not the first person to ever speak about RWBY. I thought, hey, what's a cool thing to talk about that has both been mentioned within my comment section and that I have a genuine deep interest in?
In the daytime, I'm Marinette.
Trust me, I have a big video planned on that whole mess of a show. RWBY is a very divisive show, to say the least. Some people will defend it to their last breath, and others will just crap on the show because they feel like it. To be honest, a lot of it is deserved. I'm recording this bit after recording the video, you know, because I realized that there's this one image that perfectly sums up the RWBY fanbase in its entirety.
You fucking bloody bastard! You fucking
ちょっとそんなことしたらあんたの剣が折れちゃうわよ。
その時はその時
There's this niche but not too niche streaming award-winning smash hit series called RWBY, which was created by the late Monty Oum. The irony of that series can be summed up by one quote from its creator. Monty Oum valued world building tremendously. He first created the world of RWBY because, and I quote, "Geography determines your culture, and your culture determines your people." That is ironic considering that world building is one of the greatest issues that plagues the show to this day. In fictional epics, world building is essential for setting up the socio-political climate of a world, which heavily influences the motivations that characters have. In RWBY's case, many feel as if not much is done to properly establish anything at all, and obviously this comes at the detriment of the characters. This is further exemplified by the fact that RWBY has a little side series called World of Remnant, which is used to explain the lore of the series.
If you need to have mid-season episodes just detailing the world that the main characters live in, that's a clear symptom of bad storytelling.
How did things get like this? The one thing that a lot of RWBY fans like to circle back to is that RWBY lost focus as soon as its creator passed on. It went from your everyday fun high school slice of life series about anime girls hitting each other with chainsaws that can turn into revolving railguns to a freedom fighting apocalyptic edgy and moody series about anime girls hitting each other with chainsaws that can turn into revolving railguns. Contrary to how I think Miraculous should have been a bit darker, people think RWBY should have just remained as a lighthearted show, and I really don't blame them after rewatching Volume 1. More emphasis could have been put on the fight choreography, which was the main reason why a lot of people were really watching the show to begin with, and considering how goofy the characters were already, you could ramp up the absurdity of the entire series through an inconsequential storyline. You could also be one of the people that really built a connection with the characters and felt that the series needed more substance. The execution of their arcs, although cliched, was natural and didn't leave a lot to be desired, as we were mostly satisfied with the growth they had each episode. So many might think that the great tonal shift the series had after its third volume, although poorly executed, was necessary. So where do I stand? I'm with the absurd guys, not gonna lie. RWBY Chibi is the canonical 4th season of RWBY. I have been dedicated to this series since I was 14 years old, and began watching it when it was going through probably one of the worst seasons of its run, Volume 5. I didn't really understand how to review media at that point, so I just consumed it as if it was good crap. You know, like any good drug fiend would. It later came to my attention that it was bad after hearing how many people drooled over the first 3 volumes as the peak of the series, and that the 4th and 5th are the bastard children that ruined everything. I somewhat agree with that sentiment at this point in time. Watching RWBY nowadays compared to what it was back then is like night and day. Sure, the character designs and modeling improved, which is debatable to some, but the action sequences pale in comparison to what we saw in the original 3 volumes. And again, Monty's influence on the series had a lot to do with that. In this original video series, I will go over every single volume of RWBY because personally, I want to find clarity on what went wrong, tell you guys what went right, and what improved or could have improved. There's a lot to unpack in every single video, so I hope those clicking on this are dedicated enough to join me on this long and grueling journey. With that out of the way, let's begin the complete retrospective of Monty Oum's most passionate project and what he wanted to be his magnum opus, RWBY RWBY. In order to understand what we're about to get into, briefly, I want to show you a little clip. is a 3D animated fight sequence created by Monty Oum titled Haloid, and this is what truly showcased what he was capable of to the world. The surprising part about all of this is that he practically made all of it on his own. Although the animation may look very archaic, what you need to pay more attention to is how he structured this fight. This is less a brawl between enemies, but rather a choreographed dance where nothing is beyond the realm of possibility. From impaling enemies with a gun and using that gun to shoot more enemies whilst it is still lodged in their flesh, to perfectly timing a sniper shot to ricochet off thrown plasma shields and taking out an entire wave of enemies. Game studios had recognized his skill and they were very quick to employ him, but he may have felt as if his time there was inadequate. Looking at Wikipedia, we can see just how much control Oum had over his projects compared to that of Haloid. His move to Rooster Teeth gave him more creative liberty, since instead of him being a singular unit working on a different aspect of a collaborative project, he was a part of a team that allowed him to have great influence over the nature of their products in general. Not only was he animating, but he was writing and directing, and after seeing just how much freedom and control he had, something magical happened. One night at an IHOP, Oum found lightning in a bottle. By using ketchup and napkins, Oum had conceptualized the world of Remnant and subsequently, RWBY. He immediately took his idea to Bernie Burns, a higher-up in Rooster Teeth, who gave him some disappointing but encouraging words. He could only pitch his concept fully once he had finished Red vs. Blue Season 10. I can empathize with exactly how Monty felt. Having an idea so outlandish, so unique, just chained in your mind, unable to escape out into the world. Honestly, it may have been for the best, because when that time rolled around to finally release his greatest creation into the world, he did so with a bang. RWBY is a culmination of everything Monty had learned from over the years, from flipbooks to flash animation and then to what he was best known for, 3D animation. I've listed many of the sources I used for research in this video down in the description. It is a lot to go through, but I encourage all of you watching to give it a read. His story is humble, and that is what ultimately makes it inspiring.
That was the thing I actually encountered in thought a few weeks ago. I was like, I'm the best. I'm not the best animator, I'm not the best editor, I'm not the best model, I'm not the best at anything. But I am the best at all those things that I do. So really, the only thing I can say is I'm the best Monty.
He worked tirelessly on this, trying to find ways to even maximize the amount of sleep he could get and still work efficiently. The Red trailer was made in 2 weeks for a reason. Monty Oum left us too soon, and not only am I honored to have seen what he was capable of, but I'm glad that many others share that same appreciation I do. To quote Monty, the goal wasn't to live forever, it's to make something that does. Kind of like an anime that crept its way into being one of my favorites of all time. With everything being said, I give my kindest regard to Monty's fans, but most importantly, to those who were close to him. He brought many on the internet joy and made his co-workers just as passionate as he was for his works. He will be missed, and his works will live on forever. Thank you, Monty. RWBY is a subversion of fairy tales. The world of Remnant is one without a happily ever after. After years of struggle with the creatures of Grimm, humanity was able to find the source of its greatest industrial revolution to date, dust. However, humanity gets shattered by constant war, segregation and the such, whilst still not finding a solution to the Grimm problem. They then settle into separate and ununited kingdoms. A lot of that was established in just the first episode's introduction, and I'm convinced that anyone watching the series would have been excited to explore this world and its characters. Oh boy, the characters! The characters also act as a means to subvert fairy tales. The best example I can give is Ruby Rose. She's based off of Little Red Riding Hood, a girl who lives in blissful ignorance who wholeheartedly wants to provide aid to those she cares about. Unfortunately, there are those who seek every opportunity to take advantage of others' intellects for their own gluttonous benefits. Wolves. You want to know what Ruby Rose has to say to that?
I got this thing.
Whoa! Is that a scythe?
It's also a customizable, high-impact sniper rifle.
A what?
It's also a gun.
Can you see all of me? Walk into my mystery. Step inside and hold on for dear life. Do you remember me? Capture you and set you free. I am all of me. I am.
The The Red trailer, if we can even call it that, was a great showcase of RWBY's skill set, but what I want to talk about more is how it showcased her character design. I'd imagine that many depictions of Red Riding Hood have her donning her famous red hood coupled with a white or blue dress, playing into her youthful innocence. RWBY instead wears the red cloak with a black dress. Those colors oppose that of Red Riding Hood. Originally, she was innocent and defenseless, but now this incarnation of her is innocent and deadly, even being a personification of death since she carries a scythe around. If I am not reading into things too deeply, her design makes establishing her character effortless as we get some semblance, see what I did there, of her personality through it. This makes the introduction scene with Torchwick very enjoyable. However, it's also very logically flawed for reasons we will get into later. This fight perfectly blends everything we know about RWBY together. Although young and filled with innocence, she is definitely not to be underestimated. I mean, come on. She breakdances on her scythe to incapacitate Torchwick's men. That's gotta count for something, man. What gave RWBY most of her charm this volume was the fact that one aspect of Red Riding Hood remained constant within her: the youthful innocence. She is adorable, but also very insecure. RWBY nearly takes a devastating blow during her initial fight with Torchwick, and gets rewarded for helping stop his antics, but scolded for being reckless. She's also kind of a smooth brain, and Torchwick could probably pause an online game with the hacks that he pulls off, but again, we'll cover that later. Throughout this volume, we are constantly reminded that we're following the story of a young child coming to grips with a new environment, coupled with the weight of her having to prove herself to her peers. In interviews, Monty said that he wanted his audience to grow along with the characters, so for RWBY's teen demographic, we are taken through what many consider the best years of their lives, and what their children say is the worst: high school. After her introduction, RWBY becomes an honorary student at Beacon Academy, a school dedicated to training huntsmen and huntresses, the people who kill Grimm for a living. Her skills were recognized by Professor Ozpin, who remarks that her skills are similar to that of a huntsman he knew. Also,
you have silver eyes.
I think that RWBY battling her anxiety is both relatable and entertaining. Just listen to her conversation with Yang.
Everyone at Beacon is gonna think you're the bee's knees.
I don't want to be the bee's knees, okay? I don't want to be any kind of knees. I just want to be a normal girl with normal knees.
She doesn't want to seem weak, but she doesn't want to seem special, especially since she's younger than everyone. All she wants is equality, but unfortunately she has to put up with someone who wants to tip the balance in their favor. Weiss Schnee. RWBY again subverts fairy tales with Weiss. Initially, all of us would imagine Weiss being based off of Snow White. I mean, her name translates to white snow in German. In my opinion, you would be half correct. Instead of being an incarnation of the beautiful princess, I think she's better suited to be the incarnation of the one who covets her beauty, the evil witch. Weiss acts as a contrast to RWBY. White isn't used as a color to represent innocence within her, instead it's being used to glorify her, being holier than thou. She is very intentionally RWBY's worst enemy. But what we learn from them is that sometimes your enemies know you better than you know yourself, and this is represented in the Emerald Forest arc. As an initiation, students had to explore a forest and find chess pieces. The catch was that the first person a student makes eye contact with will be their partner for the duration that they're at the academy. Yang gets Blake, Jaune gets Pyrrha, Nora gets Ren, and to her dismay, RWBY gets Weiss.
Wait! Where are you going?
Oh, God damn it!
Their clash during this arc helped them grow as characters, as they would call each other out on their shortcomings. RWBY desperately wanted to prove herself, so she acted without thinking and caused a mix-up in strategy, and Weiss wanted all the spotlight to herself, making her too demanding of her partner. The two eventually reconcile, for the time being, when RWBY had found herself in mortal danger after trying to take on a Deathstalker solo. Weiss comes in to make a last-minute save, and not only scolds her partner, but is the first to admit her own faults and gives her the most sobering words she could hear at that moment.
I'm not trying to show off. I want you to know I can do this. You're fine.
This moment is so sweet in its simplicity. The execution of the character development and progression is very cliched at the beginning, but I can understand that since this is Monty's first outing with the series and it was intentional. Monty had based his characters around ones that were prominent in the media he had consumed. This further adds to clear characterization, and it makes it easier for the audience to identify with them. RWBY and Weiss's interaction was heartwarming, ironically, and perfectly handled for the series' first outing. However, there was something beyond perfect. Perfecter, you could say. With all conflict solved, we can now see what our main characters look like when they are united, and it's breathtaking. Team Juniper's coordinated attack on the Deathstalker was tense considering the amount of effort each member had to put into their attacks, making it a blast. And Team RWBY's absolute annihilation of the Nevermore gives me chills, and that was further helped by the soundtrack. In previous versions of the script, I had struggled to mention this, even though it is a pivotal part of this show's iconography. Jeff Williams composed masterpiece after masterpiece of grunge rock music that turned the level of hype in this show up to 1000. Mirror Mirror, From Shadows, and the track that plays in this arc, which is my all-time favorite from the show, Red Like Roses. Technically it's part 2 of the song, but I feel as if both songs are meant to be listened to as one song. I digress. This moment is astounding even in today's standards. The level of action direction, cinematography, you name it, it's all done brilliantly in this scene. With their newfound partners and future friends, we now enter the day-to-day life of our heroes as they struggle in high school. But first, let's talk world building. This volume does a serviceable job of explaining the world our characters live in through self-contained episodic storylines as well as little nuggets given to us during downtime. We see this through characters like Jaune and Blake, as well as the time our characters spend in class. But the issue I mentioned before is that it really didn't paint the direction the series could potentially go in, since it was executing these themes under the guise of a high school drama and not a fictional epic. However, I will say that despite that, they contributed a significant amount in us gaining knowledge on everything we need to know at the moment. Unfortunately, characters like Yang, Ren, and Nora do absolutely nothing in this volume, so their contributions will be spoken about in future videos. What I really liked is that characters' flaws were used as world-building devices. Through this, we can not only appreciate the growth that they had in themselves, but also gain entry-level knowledge about the power system and the politics of Remnant. We just have to wait through another clash between RWBY and Weiss to get there first.
Now that sounds like a good time.
That still doesn't make us friends!
I'm trying, 16!
This portion of the story concludes RWBY and Weiss's conflict from the Emerald Forest arc. For now, at least. At this point, I don't remember if Weiss got into any more heated arguments with RWBY in future volumes. The writers really played into the evil witch aspect of her character. The jealousy she feels is mainly due to her upbringing. She's the heiress of the Schnee Dust Company, and we all know how important dust is as a resource. It saved the world. There's a certain standard she wants to uphold, so seeing her immature teammate being put in a superior position damages her pride. Weiss took every opportunity to make herself look better than RWBY by trying to show off in class and reprimanding her for acting immaturely in the forest. RWBY notices her change in attitude and asks her about it, but it ends with Weiss saying some very harsh words to her partner.
I've studied and trained, and quite frankly, I deserve better. Ozpin made a mistake.
Now that didn't seem to go very well.
The interactions that RWBY and Weiss have with Ozpin and Mr. Ports respectively are amongst my favorites in this volume. It brings together the themes of coming of age by reminding us yet again that these are children we're following. The guidance Weiss gets about battling her inferiority complex was pretty moving for the series standards. She's told that, despite not being selected as leader, she is still an exceptional individual. She shouldn't focus on getting a title, she should just be the best version of herself that she could possibly be. And that version of herself is being friends with RWBY and her reliable teammate. RWBY, on the other hand, has her reasons for being a beacon recontextualized. In fact, it's in contrast to Weiss's lesson in a way.
Being a team leader isn't just a title you carry into battle, but a badge you wear constantly. If you are not always performing at your absolute best, then what reason do you give others to follow you?
Whilst Weiss is told that the mantle of leader is just a label, RWBY is told that it's a badge deeply woven into her, a responsibility she must always think about giving her utmost best for. In terms of storytelling, this is the peak of Volume 1 for me. The most important themes are summarized, and I love it deeply. Moving on. I really liked Jaune in this volume, mainly because of how much he offered in giving us basic understanding of the power system thus far. We as an audience are just as inexperienced in this world as he is, so having someone whom we can learn more and more about Aura with step by step is a very neat addition to the series. Aura is an energy much like Ki in Dragon Ball. It allows one to pull off superhuman feats, but it can also act as a shield. When Aura gets low, you're practically left defenseless, and Jaune generates the right amount of tension with this fact. RWBY enjoys taking inspiration not only from fairy tales, but folklore and historical figures, and Jaune is inspired by none other than Jaune of Arc. She is an important figurehead in French history. At first, she was underestimated by fellow commanders and soldiers, but her strategic prowess very quickly allowed her to gain the faith of her comrades. Then she got cooked like a steak. Jaune embodies the strategic prowess of Jaune, but has an actual reason for everyone to underestimate him. He just sucks at fighting, meaning he is unable to use his aura effectively. This really bites him in the butt when he has conflict with Cardin, the class bully. Thankfully, we have a very likable character in Pyrrha to help him. I enjoyed Pyrrha's presence in this volume, even though it was brief. It was more felt than Yang's, and her name is literally in the title of the show. Pyrrha shows genuine concern for Jaune, and what makes her engaging as a character is that she doesn't bash him for his lack of skill. Instead, she tries to offer him help out of the kindness in her heart, because she genuinely believes in him. It's just, Jaune doesn't believe in himself.
I lied. I got my hands on some fake transcripts, and I lied.
Jeez, things can't get any worse. Ha! You idiot! You weren't paying attention since Cardin's room was underneath the place they had the conversation the whole time, bro. In all seriousness, a thing I really don't like about Volume 1 is how it adds in things for the sake of plot convenience. I feel like some situations could have been handled slightly differently to make things seem a bit more natural, but if you have other thoughts, please comment down below. We see the best in characters when they are under pressure, and this next scene captures that perfectly. Cardin essentially wants Jaune to betray his team by pulling a sick prank on them so that he keeps his secret, but to that, Jaune says no. At this moment, you could call Jaune many things. Incompetent, a liar, a player. But at the end of the day, you can also call him a friend and a leader. He stuck by his friends, even though he knew the cost of that would be utter embarrassment. That is some damn good characterization right there. Cardin then faces the consequences of his actions by getting attacked by an Ursa, and despite everything he's done, Jaune protects him, now using his aura effectively, with Pyrrha again acting as a guardian angel. And he finally stands up for himself. Finally, he reconciles with Pyrrha. RWBY really works well when it's simple. Things were communicated very clearly, allowing us to not only learn a bit about the world around us, but enjoy memorable moments with its characters. Then what happens if RWBY tries to add a little complexity to its narrative? Well, then you get the final arc of the volume. If I were to sum up what kind of story RWBY has been trying to tell, it would be one of fitting in. For Ruby Rose, she needed to learn that she was perfect the way she was, and needed to be ready to accept any big responsibilities that come her way. For Jaune, it was learning not to doubt himself and accept help from others when he needs it. And for Blake, well, hers is more about getting acceptance. Not only from others, but from herself. There is an incident where a Faunus boy named Sun Wukong stows away on a ship to Beacon and was then pursued by police, to which Weiss concludes he did so because he was a part of a criminal organization called the White Fang. Blake didn't take too kindly to that.
You want to know why I despise the White Fang? It's because they're a bunch of liars, thieves, and murderers!
Well, maybe we were just tired of being pushed around!
Blake's story is clearly the most ambitious one we have heard in this volume. Here, we finally dive into Remnant's politics. There's a group of biological human-animal hybrids called the Faunus who have been subject to discrimination, and Blake was one of their freedom fighters in a group called the White Fang. Due to it assigning a more radical and violent leader, Blake found herself committing acts that she simply could not be proud of. If we listen to the song From Shadows, we hear the words,
"Intruder, identify yourself,"
right at the very beginning. Blake was a criminal whether she wanted to be or not. She firmly believed in her ideals, but no longer in her actions. Wanting to distance herself from that part of her life, she metaphorically and literally. This action will play its hand later on in the series. See what I did there? Blake was clearly designed to be the most compelling off the get-go. She looked as if she had the most to hide. I mean, Monty cast RN Zack as Blake because he didn't know her well, meaning that to him, she was just as mysterious as Blake was. She's as stoic as they come. That's why I really like this line from Son.
I knew you would look better without the bow.
The ribbon acts as a shield for Blake's insecurities, kind of like a mask. It hides who she really is from people, but when it's off, we can see that she has beauty within her, despite her circumstances. Moving on to Weiss, I've seen fans express their distaste for her in this part of the volume. People thought that Weiss was a complete utter female dog.
Chi-Chi doesn't like us to swear.
She has a mildly bigoted opinion, but that's an influence of her abusive aristocratic upbringing. And she's spoiled, but that is a result of her abusive aristocratic upbringing. I'm not saying that she's right in any of her opinions, but I can sympathize with what she had to go through that made her the way that she was, which is also communicated through how other characters reacted to her opinions. It's a nuanced dilemma that the show brought forth, but I think its final execution of that wasn't what I was expecting. You see, I really like Volume 1. I would die for more stuff like Volume 1, but I just can't help but point out inconsistencies when I see them. After the third act breakup, everyone decided to go to search for Blake since she ran off after exposing herself. And this is where fan favorite Penny comes in. Penny is inspired off of Pinocchio. She's unaccustomed to the human experience because she's a robot, so there's a lot of compelling material one could write about her learning about things as complex as morality or as heartwarming as friendship. It's just, Penny is one of 3 characters who suffer from plot convenience syndrome. For context, the White Fang are revealed to be responsible for a dust robbery operation, and lo and behold, Torchwick, a human being, is helping them, which is very sus-amogus if you ask me. Blake infiltrates one of his AOs with Son and discovers this, after which they have one of the coolest fights in the volume. It was so cool in fact that it got the attention of Ruby and Penny. So then they arrive on the scene, and then Ruby gets no-diffed by Torchwick for no reason other than to give the writers an excuse to let Penny no-diff the baddies. This is the second time Ruby has lost to Torchwick for no reason. Let me explain. Those who have auras can possibly have something called a semblance, which is basically a superpower that is charged by your aura. Ruby has super speed and has been shown to have much faster reaction times than the average Donnie. Yes, I'm going to pull a Madvocate. Torchwick is an auraless normie and is very good at fighting. That's it. He's just a normal guy who is very good at fighting. Despite any underhanded tricks he may have used, Ruby should definitely have apprehended him in episode 1. Number 1. When he fired a flare at Ruby, the time she took to dodge it shouldn't have been enough for him to make it to the ladder. Number 2, Ruby knows that he uses underhanded means to escape, so she should use any edge she has over him to apprehend him the moment she makes it onto the roof, i.e. Anyways, you get the picture. I really don't like it when characters lose for the sake of the plot when pre-established lore puts everything in their favor, and the excuse is that they wouldn't be able to grow otherwise. Torchwick could have been handled a whole lot better in my opinion, but I guess his presence didn't soil the experience of this volume. He was one of the most loved characters at this point. The arc concludes nicely with Weiss and Blake sorting out their differences, and a nice cliffhanger on Penny alluding to the true nature of her maker. We are not only mostly satisfied with the first outing, but we are left wanting more. RWBY achieved a lot by having simple narratives. It communicated clearly to us the story that Monty, Kerry Shawcross, and Miles Luna wanted to tell, fitting in. They were able to do effective characterization and generate enough intrigue within the audience to carry on with the series. In terms of writing, I'd give Volume 1 a high 6 to a low 7 out of 10. It's definitely not bad. In fact, I thought a lot of it was extremely hilarious with its comedy. Sometimes, some of the ingredients they added didn't mix well with everything else, but still, their cake was pretty tasty. Volume 1 had the most limitations placed onto it in terms of production. I mean, come on, some of the episodes are 4 minutes in length, how is that even acceptable? Episodes had to be made quickly and cost effectively. Monty decided to use a software called Poser since he thought it would be the best in achieving this. What I will mention is just as much of a result of the software as it is the constraints that they had. The action direction does save a lot of scenes from aging poorly, especially in fight scenes. However, in scenes when characters are standing idly or talking, it doesn't look too great. Take the infamous dark people that RWBY Chibi would make fun of later down the line. There clearly either wasn't enough time to make unique models for background characters, or they didn't have the budget to do so. Also, RWBY sucks biscuits! Thankfully, some issues are immediately fixed when Volume 2 rolls around, which is just lovely. That's all I really have to say about production though. I really expected this section to be much longer, but I think things are mostly covered in the narrative section. I also overestimated how long this section would be, so I'm just gonna blitz it. Essentially, people were really excited to see where Penny's storyline would go, and they began analyzing the lyrics of character soundtracks to find any hidden lore. Okay, that's it. Now you watch a still image. The next video in this series will cover Volume 2, which I am very excited to watch. Volume 2 actually has insight into the production of the series given to us directly from the creators in YouTube video format, so that will just make writing so much easier. Now, I must say, DumiLumLum is a one-man show. I write, record, and edit everything. I even made the rose petal particle graphic. It really would have been better, but, you know, Blender just didn't want to cooperate with me. That aside, I want this video series to mark a new era in DumiLumLum content. Yes, we'll have an even worse upload schedule. From the days of awkwardly talking about romantic comedies, and now to confidently talking about fantasies. And romantic comedies. Wait, what if it's both? I guess you'll just have to find out next time.